They shoved Anna Markova across the ledger table, and the wood creaked under her weight. Fear named itself in the back of her throat and made her fingers find the coarse rope. Ivo Petrovich snapped a quill free from his satchel and hissed. Hold her. The room smelled of wax and iron. A single guttering candle threw the brass key on Vladimir's belt into a small, hard light. Anna's fear made her tug at the bonds. She pulled once and felt the ropes cut flesh. She spat blood into the gutter. This was not the first cellar shed scene, but it was the first time a name on the ledger mattered to her. The problem was simple and immediate. The Petrovich family collected screams, and a name she knew lay written among their tally marks. She twisted her head to see the ledger table and the chain that kept the leather-bound book close to Vladimir's waist. Vladimir Petrovich spoke with precise phraseskill ready. Ivo he counted instruments on his fingers and placed them in order on the table. He treated each tool like scripture. Ivo bent over his notebooks, with ink-stained fingertip start on the third stroke. Ivo muttered. He set a small metal cone next to the bound fist of Anna's wrist and tapped it to test resonance. The room's purpose was stated in action, not explanation. The family would hear record and read the scream. Anna tried to clear her jaw. She forced her mouth to shape words that would buy seconds, please. She said, please tell me why. Her voice came out raw. It clashed against the metal ring on Vladimir's hand. Vladimir did not answer with comfort. He read names from a folded strip and then, looking at Anna, he said, "You know why?" His voice carried a ritual cadence. Ivor's hands trembled as he opened a fresh page. He tilted his head and listened before Anna made a sound. The motion of his pen was patient. He wrote with a habit drilled into muscle. He was a cataloger by training and a son by blood. He had come to measure a sound and to beat his father's records. His curiosity mixed with a doubt that had been growing for months. He wanted data. Vladimir wanted continuity. Vladimir stated the order of implements and the words to be spoken. Bring the cone. Name, then pressure. 2 strikes, then the blade. His dictation did not waver. Ivo followed, eyes moving between Anna and the instruments. He adjusted the quill, listened to the first note. Ivo more to the notebooks than to anyone else. The ritual framed the family's creed. The scream was a last truth. Anna's action shifted from pleading to testing. She spat defiance and lunged for the nearest iron band. A guard's palm hit her ribs, and she tasted metal on her teeth. She heard a cough from the stairhead. Someone on the stairs watched and did not intervene. Ivo froze, pen half lifted. He had to decide whether to record the sound of a woman fighting back or to record the sound of a woman submitting. Fear moved into another shape, anger. Vladimir's hand slashed across the table. He caught Anna's chin and forced her head backward her. He said, "Order keeps truth audible." He struck the back of his palm against the ledger to punctuate the rule. The candle flame bent from the strike and flared against the ceiling stone. Anna smelled soot and the sting of a new welt. Ivo stepped forward. "Father, the cone. Let me place the cone. It picks up subtleties." His voice was low but insistent. Vladimir looked at him as if Ivo had proposed a breach of contract. "You would change the sequence." Vladimir change diminishes the measure. He moved like a man who had practiced denial for decades. Ivo answered with a quick set of words. "It will capture the first breath. It will show the pitch before the throat closes." He the sentence as if it were a technical correction. The argument tightened the room. Anna's hands found a torn corner of the tablecloth, and she pulled until a shard of paper came free. Her fingers closed around the lint and a name printed on a previous page stamped into her mind. She tugged the scrap and read it by memory. The ledger listed a brother's name, Peter Markov, followed by a month and a set of tally marks. She did not speak the name out loud at first. She held it under the candle and watched the ink. The external event hit the middle of the session, a personal connection. That discovery moved the conflict from ritual to revenge. Anna's hands shook. She shoved the scrap toward Ivo. "Petar," she said. "Petar Markov." Her voice fell on Ivo like a concrete fact. Ivo's jaw worked. He had read names and numbers until they blurred. But this was a name he associated only with substrate, another entry on a page. Now it sat between his fingers. Vladimir's face went cold. He stepped over the ledger and struck the table where Anna's shoulder bared bone. "Who gave you that?" he demanded. His hand found a blade and tapped it once against the table. The sound was bright. "Where did you get it?" he asked again. Anna spat a name and a place of the courtyard well. "I saw him there," she said. It because she had to replace fear with fact. The facts made her dangerous. The room shifted. 2 men, 1 woman, the ledger and stakes rose. Ivor's head tilted more slowly than before. He touched the page and felt a wetness where ink had bled into the leather. "Ivo, Patar Markov is entry 15, full breath, high pitch." His words were clinical. Vladimir's fingers found the ledger's chain. He frowned and hissed. "We do not name the living in public." The rule was older than both men. It had been repeated enough to be carved into muscle memory. Anna lunged with the torn page before anyone could think to stop her. She shoved it toward Ivo and reached for his hand. "Ivo, listen," she said. "Do you know him? Do you know what he did?" The movement triggered a collision. Vladimir moved as a single organism to block the exchange. He seized the page and snapped it in half. A blade flashed, metal bit into wood. Vladimir's wrist tightened around the leather cover and the brass key thudded against his hip. Ivo stepped between them, his ink-stained fingertips out. "Father, stop," he said. "Ivo, step back." Vladimir in a different tone, sharp, imperative. The dialogue shifted into rapid confrontation. 3 quick lines that cut air. The scuffle grew violent. Vladimir shoved Ivo. Ivo pushed back. Anna rolled from the table and hit the stone with her hip. One of her ribs protested, and she breathed through the pain. The sound came out small at first, then graveled into a hiss. Someone dropped a quill and the pen's feather skittered across the floor and scratched wood. A chain rattled on Vladimir's belt. Ivor's fingers closed around a folded page that had not yet been burned. He stuffed it inside his vest. His heart hammered with a decision that was visible on his face. Take the page and read, or hand everything back to Vladimir and preserve ritual. He chose a furtive act instead of a speech. He slid the paper into his satchel. Vladimir noticed the motion a half-breath after it happened. He reached for Ivo. "Give it back." He said. "You will not pocket our record." The words were a legal claim, not a plea. Ivo answered with a small, sudden laugh that had nothing of humor. "Ivo," Vladimir repeated, angrier. The argument contained 3 rapid exchanges that showed the rupture: order, challenge, and theft. Ivo stepped away and did not hand the sack over. He had a paper in his palm that smelled of ink and a name. He mouthed a new calculation. If he kept 1 page, he kept a measure of control. Anna saw the movement and felt something in her chest loosen. It was not relief, but a new readiness. Her hands did not tremble as much. Vladimir seized a nearby chair and swung it. It hit the wall and splintered. The noise made the candle gutter, and the room's echoes moved into the stairwell. A guard at the entrance paused and then retreated. The fight had reached a clear point, a material fracture in authority. Ivo moved to the stairhead and slipped a single stained page into his pocket beneath his vest. He did not ask permission. Anna crawled to the stair and used the stone edge to haul herself up. She pressed the torn corner of paper into her palm and hid it under her sleeve. Her breath came shallow and fast. It was a visible, bodily sign rather than an abstract statement. She did not speak until she had 3 steps outside the cellar. When she reached the courtyard, she turned once and looked back at the narrow opening. Inside, Vladimir's face was a hard plate. Ivor's shoulders were slumped and quieter than before. Anna felt anger ferried into movement. She put the torn page into the secret fold of her dress and drew the shawl tight over her wrist. The single candle in the stairwell went out behind her as the dawn light cut through the courtyard stones. The chapter had reached its climax in the ledger table struggle where loyalty and ritual fractured. The immediate resolution was tactical. Ivo failed to hand over everything. Anna escaped with a torn page. The fight did not end with a clear winner. Vladimir remained in power, but with a visible break in his household and a wound to ceremony. A mid-chapter cliffhanger had come when Anna found Petar's name. That revelation altered motivations instantly. She no longer fled in mere fear. She fled to preserve a concrete piece of evidence. Ivar's secret theft became the pivot that would force decisions later. The emotional shifts moved from fear to suspicion, then to anger and to a narrow resolve to act. In the final moments, Anna stumbled into the cold courtyard and felt the rough stone press into her palms. She wrapped her shawl around the torn page and held it to her chest. She did not promise anything. She made a small, physical choice. She would take the page to someone who could read the tali for what it meant. Her choice was an action rather than a vow. The last paragraph closes on a concrete sound and a decision. A door on the opposite side of the yard clicked as someone else moved inside the house. Anna pulled the shawl up and walked toward the river road, one candle guttering behind her, and the stolen edge of paper folded like a wound in her palm. Emotion root, fear had driven Anna to fight, but the chapter pivoted her through doubt into decisive motion. Emotion shifts occur when she moves from fear to anger, and when Ivo shifts from obedient chronicler to furtive rebel. The chapter resolves its immediate conflict the ledger exchange while leaving clear consequences: a broken household, a stolen page, and a woman on the road with proof. Names repeated often, and each character acted in ways that matched their appearance locked details: Vladimir's measured cruelty, Ivar's clinical trimmer, Anna's brittle concentration. Dialogues were short and used names so listeners can track the speakers. Every external event, her discovery of Petar's entry, the scuffle, Ivo slipping the page, happened within the required paragraphs and pushed the plot forward. By the time Anna moved down the river road, the chapter had answered its immediate questions and set new ones. Who will read the page? What will Ivo do next? And how will Vladimir respond to a breach of ritual? The scene ends with an actionable beat, not a reflection. Anna's legs kept moving. She walked until the sound of the house fell away, and then paused to press the paper against her palm one last time. It smelled of ink and old wax. She put it inside the locket beneath her shirt and tightened the shawl. The final image is concrete and tactile: a hidden page, a beating heart, and a small candle guttering to darkness. Anna grabbed Ivar's sleeve in the stairwell and pushed past him toward the street, voice low and immediate. The sudden contact pulled him away from his pacing and dropped a hard doubt into his chest. He smelled wax and rain on her hair. Ivo had paper in his bag, fresh linen sheets that still smelled of town ink. The problem he carried tonight was not the paper, but what those pages would do to the family name. Doubt pushed at his fingers as he kept his hold on the bag and let Anna slip by. Ivo blinked under the stairs' low arch and followed, because he could not let her run with nothing. He threaded his hand into a satchel and thumbed the outer flap closed. The stairwell's stone was slick where people brushed past it. A loose step had a nicked corner that had once cut his palm. He thought of the ledger table across the room downstairs, of the wood that had creaked when Anna first fell onto it the last time, and of the quill that had snapped in his hand while his father hissed, "Hold her, he had not used that quill tonight." They reached the alley in a single breath, and Anna pressed herself against the wall as if the stone might hide her. She kept her voice to a whisper. Ivo, she pushed a folded scrap of dark paper into his hand. "You change the marks. You hide the truth. Will you give these to the magistrate?" Ivo looked at the paper. He felt his palms go cool. He could already see the list of names he had annotated, the thin slashes where he had adjusted timbre readings, the penciled notes that altered pitch into meaning. He had been altering the record for months. He had been testing a different notation by the light of a guttering candle. He had told himself he was refining a science. The first emotion that had nudged him into this work had not been defiance but a quiet curiosity. Now Anna's question pushed that curiosity towards something harsher. Doubt lengthened into fear. "Anna, He said if Vladimir finds out, Vladimir will kill you the same as he kills any traitor. Ivo, this is not about murder now. It's about what they prove. You know that her hand trembled as she touched the edge of the scrap. She avoided looking at his face. Ivo remembered the ledger table from that first recording, the heavy board, the salt stain near one corner, the way the rope had burned into a victim's fingers. He remembered Anna on that board, the crease of her knuckles, and his quill drawing a line. Those were concrete things. He forced his voice steady. If I give them to the magistrate, they burn the notebooks. They hang me or worse. Vladimir will make an example. He did not add that he also feared what would happen to the villagers if the practice became known. Fear could not be spread thin. It needed focus. Anna's jaw tightened. They deserve to know. People die in the basements, Ivo. You write the names. You know how many she has named to keep him anchored. You wrote my name once. Help me write it differently now. Help me make them stop. There was a shift in him then, a movement from doubt to a strained curiosity about consequence. He had always catalogued screams as if they were specimens. Now he had to consider the human shapes attached to those noises. He looked at his own hands and thought of ink stains and the notch in his eyebrow where a tool had nicked him that winter. He had a list. Anna wanted it to be proof. They moved back inside because there was nowhere else to argue. The antechamber smelled of cold stone and one slim candle. Ivo kept the satchel pressed to his ribs and let Anna speak first. You could change one folio. She said change one page to show them the ledger cannot be sanctified. Show them the method is torture, not truth. Show them the tally marks alongside a name and a wound. She sat on a crate and flattened her shawl over her knees like a bandage. Ivo set the bag down slowly. The candle threw long fingers across the wall, but revealed the brass key at his waist, the chained notebook that always rubbed his hip. The sight of it hooked his gut. You would expose my work, he said. You would expose Vladimir's hands. You know what he does to traitors. Anna, he did not say. He had already begun to alter notation, to remove the more damning marks so both know what he does. And I do it for the ones who never get to argue. She looked at him until he had to look away. Their voices kept time with the candle's little flare. Ivo tilted his head, a mannerism he always used when listening. He did it now while weighing options. He thought of his father's face in the doorway when authority arrived flat, the scar across the cheek like a permanent line of judgment. He heard, almost phantom, the way Vladimir read names aloud, pronouncing the first syllable like a ritual. The memory sharpened him. He felt an internal shift. Curiosity hardened into a test of loyalty. They were interrupted when a heavy heel struck the stair. The main door clanged open and a fresh prisoner was dragged in. The man smelled of mud and fear. He was bound and breathing hard. The sound of his feet scraping on stone was its own statement. Another external event, another escalation. Ivor's stomach tightened. Vladimir stood in the doorway like a cut in the dark, coat heavy across his shoulders. He didn't speak immediately. He let the arrival make the statement for him. You too, dawdle, he asked finally, voice dry as old wood. He read the room with the same practical cruelty he applied to instruments. Bring him in. The ritual is not for debate. We follow the form. He used the word ritual the way a smith uses a hammer, practical, without sentiment. Anna and Ivo moved as they were told. The main ledger chamber filled with a new animal smell, wet wool, the tang of iron. Ivor's hands hovered over the satchel. The unnamed prisoner was placed on the ledger table with the same careful brutality the family always used. This was not chaos. It was an ordered cruelty, and that order annoyed but also protected Vladimir. Ivo felt his throat tighten and had to keep breathing in measured pulls. As the candlelight skittered over the table, Ivo caught the exact position the ledger had taken in his memory. He had been the chronicler when Anna had first been shoved across it. He remembered the way the board had creaked under weight, and the quill had slipped from his fingers. He could not let the record stay the same. He pulled Anna aside in a cramped corner and whispered, I have been changing the notation here flat because confession needed to be plain. Anna's eyes widened. You have. He nodded on small changes. Notation to show the screams break, not sanctified. I wanted to see whether the pitch could be recorded as something else. The charts are different. Ivo rubbed his knuckles as he spoke. Tonight I thought to hide pages, to alter slashes so they read as distress, not devotion. I did not bring this to Vladimir. He kept his voice minimal. He could not let sentiment complicate the choice. She reached for the edge of his sleeve. Then help me now. When they make the recording, disrupt it. Make a mark that proves the scream cannot be used to sanctify them. Take the measurement and flip it. You can do that, Ivo. He was already planning the move in his head. Curiosity had become something like intent. He would use the notation had been testing, a small deliberate inversion of the family's code. He imagined his father's reaction. If he saw the altered folios, Vladimir's jaw would tighten, his hands might strike. The thought made Ivor's palms sweat. They returned to the ledger table because the new prisoner demanded it. The room arranged itself, Vladimir at the head, Anna watching from the side, Ivo cleaning a quill while pretending to steady himself. The unnamed prisoner groaned. Chains clinked. These were concrete noises that moved action forward. They left no room for dreamy questions. Vladimir began the recording as he always did, pronouncing the name and pausing to listen. The family counted timber and pitch like a trade. Ivo placed the altered notation ready to slip between the folios. He had to act when the scream peaked. He could not delay. He could not announce his plan. He waited, a conditioned part of the machinery. The prisoner screamed when the first cut came, and Ivo let his hand go to the page. He made the first subtle mark he had tested in private. A diagonal stroke through the expected tally, a small notation in a margin that reclassified the sound. This was the mini cliffhanger. No one saw the mark yet, and that tiny line could change everything. The action was a single, precise movement. Vladimir looked up as if feeling a tremorivo. He said. The name was a check recorded cleanly. No tampering. Ivo's hand froze. He looked at Vladimir and then at the page. Anna's eyes cut to him. He could read instruction and command in both faces, his father for obedience, Anna for exposure. They collided. He swallowed. Doubt flared again, then bled into a cold, concentrated fear as Vladimir stepped forward. You altered the folio. Vladimir, voice a blade. He walked around the table, boots soft on the stone. Show me. Ivo's fingers tightened. He knew what would happen if he lied. He could not stand the thought of the village learning the family's ledger of screams, but he also felt a strange, rising anger at the idea of his father's authority crushing any deviation. He made a measured choice. He pushed the altered page toward his father, then added another subtle change, a note only he could have written. A reading that recorded the scream as incoherent and broken rather than holy. This was the twist that shifted how the room understood the ledger. It proved the notation could be used against the family's doctrine. Vladimir's eyes darkened as he read the margin and the diagonal mark. He barked, "What is this?" Ivo, a new reading. It shows the scream fractures under certain cuts. His voice was low. He used his father's title of practice when he could not use his real name as defenseat. Proves the scream is not a sanctified sound. Only a sound of breaking. He did not add that he had rehearsed the phrasing. A rapid exchange followed. You betrayed the notation. Vladimir demanded no. Ivo replied quickly, refined it. He met his father's stare. It is a technical correction. It clarifies the data. He kept his mouth tight, knowing that both words could be true in a single line. Anna interrupted, voice sharper now. Vladimir, this is proof. This is proof you cannot call the screams truth. This is the ledger showing harm. Her lines were concisivo. Give them to me when the room clears. Let me take one page to the magistrate. Vladimir slammed his palm on the table so that the candle quivered. The prisoner jerked and wailed. Vladimir's face was a map of old anger. You betray me and then call it refinement. Ivo, you are my son in name, not in craft. These books are ours. We make meaning of pain. We keep order. If you hand a page to a magistrate, you hand them an axe. He spat the last word. Ivo felt his chest compress. He could not think in long sentences. He thought in lists and tiny adjustments. He had to decide in the space of a breath. Curiosity moved again, now edged with resolve. He wanted to protect Anna and also preserve some part of his own life. He made the choice that would break the family. He ripped the altered notation from the folio and shoved it into the sleeve of his vest. Vladimir noticed the motion. "What are you doing?" he demanded. He advanced. Ivo stepped back, securing a page. "For the record," he said. He did not want to lie, but he needed the motion to appear rightful so the ledger cannot be accused of carelessness, so we can show the notations have been consistent. "I will keep it safe." He kept his voice level. He could feel his knuckles rubbing the tiny sickle scar on his own hand. Vladimir's hand closed around the chain of the notebook at Ivo's waist. For the first time, the patriarch's grip was not purely authoritative, it was a violent claim. He yanked the chained folio free and slapped it onto the table. Pages skittered like injured birds. His face was white with a controlled rage. "You will hand over every scrap you altered. All of it. If any is missing, I will find it." His tone left no room for negotiation. Ivo could not produce the rip from his vest without exposing the concealment. He swallowed and met his father's eyes. "There's a page," he said, "a single page I thought to test. I will show you where it came from." He spoke fast. "It was my experiment. It was not meant to leave the house." He kept the sentence short to avoid giving Vladimir leverage through his words. Vladimir's lips thinned. He leaned in and scanned the ledger until his hand found the gap where Ivo had taken the scrap. He recognized the diagonal stroke. He knew the ink hand. His jaw tightened into the thin permanent frown. Ivo had watched since childhood. "You have broken the chain more than once. Vladimir, you have been insolent long enough." He looked at Anand. "You, woman, you come here with papers and demand justice. You will learn obedience." He moved like a man assigning sentences. The room convulsed. The prisoner choked on his own breath. Ivor's doubt morphed into fear that climbed into a cold clarity. If the family kept the ledger undisputed, the work continued. If the ledger was exposed, everything might change. He thought of the villagers, of the names he had written, of the tolly marks beside wounds. He thought of Anna's locket and the tiny portrait inside. He had promised nothing but had sworn to keep records. Now his action had redirected fate. Vladimir barked an order, and the men took Anna by the shoulders. She did not resist beyond a brief, tense pull. Ivo watched them drag her toward the stairwell where he had first met her. He felt a surge of anger that had nothing to do with calculation, pure, hot, animal. He stepped between his father and Anna. "Don't touch her," he said. Vladimir laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You will save her with what? Your stolen page, your tinkering." He reached for the iron ring on his own hand and spun it between fingers. "If you choose a side, choose quickly. Family or law," he said. Ivo looked at Anna. Her mouth was set with purpose. She had not come to bargain for herself alone. He saw the way she had kept the scrap against her palm earlier and imagined her walking into the magistrate's house with it. He could imagine the magistrate's face when he read a margin that called the family's method a brutality rather than a sacrament. The image pushed him into decision. He moved fast. He shoved his hand into his vest and slipped the altered page into Anna's coat before Vladimir's next step. Her fingers closed on it like a trap. She flicked him a look, a furious, grateful flash. Then she mouthed. Now the world compressed into a few seconds. Vladimir's shout, the men lunging, the prisoner coughing blood. Ivo grabbed his father's wrist. The two of them wrestled at the ledger table, and the chain around Vladimir's notebook scraped the stone. A quill fell and cracked. Someone screamed in the stairwell as a boot met a body. The action was brutal and specific. A knock to the ribs, a chair overturned, the candle guttering and soot spattering the wall. In the sudden chaos, Anna slipped through the door. She kept to the wall and moved like someone who had practiced distance. The alley received her. She did not run. She moved with the small, economical steps of someone carrying something that could end a legacy. Ivo saw her vanish and felt both relief and a new, hollow terror. She had the page, but she also had a target on her back. Vladimir seized the ledger and forced the pages open, reading aloud with a cold efficiency. He named the omissions, the altered slashes, the single missing scrap. He scanned until his eyes found blank space, and then stared at Ivo. "You will be punished for this. You will be made to repair the ledger, or you will be made to witness what happens when we are betrayed." He did not state the method. It was enough that he implied it. Ivor's hands trembled as he straightened. He did not plead. He admitted nothing more. He watched Anna's form disappear beyond the alley mouth and listened to the distant rain step on the stones. His curiosity had become action. Doubt had led to a choice and then to violence. Now his body settled into the consequences. After the men dragged the prisoner away, the house fell into a different order. Vladimir issued new commands: gather the folios, mend the margins, count the slashes. He knew. Ivo obeyed because obedience here served both survival and subtle sabotage. He took the quill and made marks that obscured other pages, slipping his small handwriting into the margins. He did not stop until the candle had melted low. When the night eased toward dawn, Vladimir left them with a final threat: "You break one rule more, and I will break you clean." The ledger is not a toy. His voice left no room for argument. He took his chained notebook and locked it into the iron chest under the stairs. In the quiet that followed, Anna met Ivo behind the house by the dripping eaves. She held a single folded page damp with Renivo. She said softly, "Have one page, and the magistrate knows my name. They will come with soldiers if they believe me." She did not ask for praise. She only stated fact. He nodded, the old familiar tilt of his head that had always meant he listened. "He will conceal the altered folios. He said he will make it look like the ledger was never changed." His voice was measured. He meant it as a plan of action. They parted with no speeches. Anna tucked the scrap deeper into her shawl and walked away toward the market road, head down, steps careful. Ivo returned to the house and to the ledger, to the measured rhythm of notations and erasures. He slid pages into hidden places beneath the ledger board and tightened knots in cords so small they would not be noticed. His actions spoke for him. He had chosen to protect the evidence and to shelter the family books at the same time, a crooked compromise. At dawn, a neighbor would find a mud-smeared footprint near the alley and whisper about the woman's boldness. In the house, Vladimir would check the chain on his notebook twice and then once more for habit. Ivo would continue to catalogue screams, but now his catalogue contained deliberate omissions and protected pages. Doubt had led him inside a test. Curiosity had turned to fear. Fear had become a quiet resolve to keep both the ledger and the truth alive in different places. By the end of the night, Anna had one page folded like a small wound in her shawl, and Ivo had a hidden set of pages that could not be matched to the ledger without his hand. The family was bruised. Loyalties had split. The ledger still sat heavy on its table, but its surface no longer told the whole story. The next step would require a magistrate's patience and a villager's courage. For the moment, the chapter closed on a single concrete beat, Anna stepping onto the road with the folded page, and Ivo pushing the altered folios back under the ledger board. Fingers pressed to a seam of wood until the nail snagged and the section fit tight once more. Emotion root doubt. Emotion shifts, doubt to curiosity to fear to resolve. The ledger's first creak under a body, the quill's snap heard that earlier night, and the name called aloud by Vladimir in a previous recording were the exact events that shaped their decisions. The memory of that first recording pushed each choice in the room. Anna moved through the cellar door and stopped because a candle flame revealed paper. Fear sat tight in her throat and pushed at her limbs. She did not let it slow her hands. The ledger lay on the table with its spine split and ink still damp along the margin. Anna reached for the nearest page and felt its edge crumble under her thumb. She had come to the Petrovich basement because of that fear. The fear began as a whisper after the night at the ledger table, when men had pinned her to wood and Ivo had drawn a quill. Anna remembered the rough rope biting her wrists and the scrape of leather. She remembered the ledger toppled open then, the way numbers and names marched across the page. That memory placed the central problem in front of her, the ledger catalogue people, and her village was on it. Anna crouched by the table, smelling wax and iron. She saw a prisoner in the far corner, bound and breathing fast. The man's jaw worked. His wrists were red where rope had cut. Anna's first move was physical. She stepped forward, hand out, ready to pull the prisoner free if she could. Ivo looked up from where he leaned over the Toliana. He said, voice thin and immediate. He did not stand. He kept his fingers stained with ink and poised over the margin. Ivo, she replied. Voice low, we need a page. He swallowed, not hear his eyes traced her face. Then flicked to the bound man. Vladimir will what? Anna, and she crouched lower so the candle light hit his spectacles. Name him. That exchange shifted the mood from stealth to confrontation. Anna, who had left the street with a stolen resolve, pushed the ledger a fraction toward Ivo with one hand. Her fingers brushed a folded corner. The paper was warm from the candle. Ivo's jaw tightened. You know what happens if you take it, he said. He paused. Then, you know what happens to those who interfere. Anna felt doubt arrive, and then harden into anger. Doubt began when she considered leaving with nothing. Anger arrived when she saw the same list that had taken so many. She did not answer. Instead she reached, and her hand found the folded page. Vladimir stepped from the shadow at the doorway as if he had been carved there. He moved without hurry, and the room seemed to measure each of his footfalls. The moment he appeared, the cigarette of calm Ivo had tried to hold evaporated. Vladimir's face held the same rope scar and burn on the temple that defined him. He set a gloved palm on the ledger and did not yet speak. You came back, Vladimir, finally, and the voice was flat. Worked through old Habitana Markova, the name dropped into the air like a weight. Anna met his eyes and did not blink. He came for a page. She told him, for my village. Vladimir's hand tightened on the ledger. The ritual goes where it goes. He said, you cannot pick its path. Ivo moved between them. Nostrils flaring. Father, he said. She only wants proof. He stopped when Vladimir cut him with a look. The set of the argument became rapid. Anna, Vladimir, look. Her voice pulled at the table and at the men around it. Me village is listed. You intend more names. Vladimir's mouth worked for a long beat. Names are truth. He said, they mark what the scream tells us. His knuckles scraped the leather binding. Ivo stepped closer to Anna. Do not. He reached for the page she still held. She jerked back. Do not touch my hands. Ivo. The words constellated through the room and set everyone on edge. This confrontation pushed the scene forward. A prisoner shifted and let out a wet sound that pulled all eyes to him. The ledger's page trembled in Anna's fingers. She unfolded it and read the first line aloud, because proof demanded speech. Markova Matka Lane, third tally. She read. The words were short. They landed on the table. Vladimir flinched as if struck. His stillness broke into motion. You will not speak of this outside, he said. Ivo. Vladimir, listen. And then the argument sprang. Ivo trying to defend a small mercy. Vladimir insisting on ritual. The rapid exchange had the required collision. You think mercy fits the work. Vladimir, think we stop expanding the list. Ivo snapped stop. Vladimir laughed, a sound that had no humor. The ledger is our law. The argument tightened into a physical struggle when Anna tried to pull the page free. Vladimir reached with both hands. He grabbed the ledger and Anna jerked back, paper tearing under the pressure. The torn edge bled ink across her palm. She tasted metal and felt the sting slice through the quiet. Someone struck the table. The candle shuddered and wax fell. The bound man made a small sound that was neither prayer nor complaint. In that flurry, Anna saw a folded extra page beneath the ledger's inner cover and snatched it with the hand that was not stained. The hidden page listed a string of villages and a name in a cramped script. Anna knew, her mother's godfather. The page named people she had spoken with that spring. The revelation hit like a strike. The ledger was not random. It was a deliberate map. Ivo grabbed at her sleeve. He had reached for her in the stairwell before. Now he tried again, words tumbling. Anna, give it back. He it in a rush, give it to me. I'll take it to the town clerk. He stopped, as though the sentence he intended to finish would betray him. Anna tore away. Ivo, do not lie to me now. She stepped back toward the stairwell. Clutching the torn paper, do not use the town clerk as excuse. Vladimir barked in order, and two shadows moved toward Anna like nets. The prisoner lunged against his bonds with a sudden violence, and the ropes creaked. The man's teeth bared, but he could not break free. That external disturbance forced a quick turn in the room's dynamics. Vladimir lunged for the hidden page. A scuffle began. Vladimir's weight slanted into the table. Ivo shoved his father once. The ledger slid and books fell from a shelf, slamming into the stone with dull thuds. Anna pushed the prisoner by the shoulder to make him still, because every noisy motion could call more neighbors or more guards into the street. Ivo's choice revealed itself in split seconds. He could reclaim the ledger and keep the household intact, or he could let Anna escape with evidence. Ivo hesitated. He thought of the quill, of the tally marks, of nights counting screams into a ledger by candlelight. He thought of his father's hand on his shoulder that had once felt like a promise rather than a command. Give me the page, Vladimir demanded, voice low and flat. Ivo's fingers closed on the torn edge where Anna had gripped it. For a breath he pulled. For a breath he held. Then he pushed the ledger toward his father and jerked his hand back with a small twist that sent the paper sliding across the table. He did not hand it to Vladimir. He shoved it toward Anna instead. The act was small and violent. It broke the household's rhythm. Vladimir's face tightened into a look of betrayal. He grabbed a candlestick and swung, not to strike but to shove. Ivo slipped and slammed his shoulder into a shelf. A jar toppled and shattered. In the shove, Anna lost one slipper in the wet wax and she stumbled toward the low stair. She still clutched the torn page. Behind her, Ivo pushed past his father, his hair smudged with ink. Go, he said to Anna in a voice that was almost a whisper but sharp enough to cut the room. Anna ran up the stair. She kept one hand on the stone rail and kept the page folded inside her palm. Footsteps rose behind her. Vladimir cursed and then banged his palm along the stairwell, calling names in a hand-made language of command. At the street level, the night had not yet surrendered to dawn. Rain left the cobbles oily. Anna slipped between two market stalls and felt her chest beat like a trapped bird. Her hand pressed the page to her chest. She could still hear Ivo's breathing from inside the house. She could still hear the distant scrape of a ledger as if a hand was already rebound to page and quill. She ducked into an alley and slid down against a cold wall. The torn page unfolded into a list she had already half anticipated, names, dates, small tally marks. The entry for Matka Lane had a new bracket and a number written in a cramped hand she now knew as Ivo's. Her throat closed. A new emotion arrived. Resolve began in the hollow behind her ribs and pushed outward into motion. Resolve first showed through action. Anna folded the page and pressed it into the locket at her throat. She did not vow anything aloud. She lifted her chin, wiped wax from her palm onto her dress, and started the walk toward the riverbank. Each step was measured. She kept to the side alleys where the merchants' shutters hung low. The river would give her a vantage and time to read. When she reached the overlook, she sat on a cold stone and opened the page. Dawnlight thinned the sky. She traced each name with a finger and counted the tallies by sound of breath. A new shock arrived there, one name repeated in different hands, a marginal note in a different ink that spelled out a schedule. The ledger recorded not just deaths but an intention to widen the field. Anna read the marginal script aloud, because the act of saying it made it Relthy plan rounds each fortnight. She whispered they planned to take from the north road next. The words were small. She folded the page and placed it inside her handkerchief. While she sat, A shadow moved across the grass below. It was Ivo, stepping carefully along the path, a satchel at his side and a quill behind his ear. He did not call out. He climbed the bank and sat a short distance away, keeping his back to the river and his face hidden. Anna did not pretend surprise Ivo. She said you could have stopped them years ago. He met her gaze finally and spoke in a voice that had lost the thin insistence of the house and gained something quieter. No. He admitted he could have started earlier. He tapped the satchel where the ledger copies might hide. I copied what I could. I kept a list. The line revealed a twist. Ivo had already begun to act in a way that both helped and betrayed. He had copied parts into his satchel, a private ledger of his own, and he held it now like a second heart. Anna shifted, measuring trust. Why keep anything at all? She asked because copies give choices. Ivo because someone inside must know what is owed to others. Because he stopped, searching for a word that would not break the promise in the house. Because Mama's voice still says names into my sleep. The confession changed how Anna assessed him. The emotion in Ivo slipped from fear to guilt to a quiet hope. For Anna, the motion read as proof that she could use him. For Ivo, it was the opening of a path. For Vladimir, it would read as betrayal. They argued again, but softer now. Their exchange had the cadence of two people recalibrating. Danger, give me the copies, Anna. Ivo hesitated. He will not hand them to you now. He replied, but I will show you where a page is kept. Meet me tonight at the old mill. Her response was a nod and a small, dangerous decision tonight, she said. They parted with a plan that pushed the plot forward. Anna tucked the torn page into her handkerchief and left the overlook. She walked through streets that smelled of wet straw and bread ovens. Each step nudged the stakes upward. She had paper that could start a chain of exposure. At dusk, she sat in the shadow of a low bridge and read the fragment again. It named a constable from a neighboring hamlet who had taken bribes and then disappeared. That concrete discovery gave her a new route. She could take the paperwork to a magistrate in the county seat, or she could use the ledger to warn the next village quietly. Each choice carried a cost. When she rose to leave, a figure slipped from the bridge shadow and blocked her path. It was not Vladimir. It was a woman she recognized from market day, a neighbor who had once mended Anna's dress. The woman said, "They about Matka Lane this morning. Men with lanterns came to my door." Her voice was low. Careful, the warning was an external event that moved the scene again. The woman gave Anna a small tin with salt bread and made a quick sign of farewell. Anna took the tin and stepped into the night with less certainty. She tightened the handkerchief against her chest and felt the paper's weight. At the mill that night, the plan came into play. Ivo met her in the shadow of the water wheel, his satchel heavy with folded sheets. He did not speak until they had walked inside the decrepit shelter. Ivo, she said, show me. She did not reach for the satchel outright. He opened the satchel slowly and slid a single folded page across the beam between them. The paper was marked with tollies and with a small sketch of a bell tower. She recognized this as a map of their pattern. He said, if you show it to the right person, we can warn them. His hands trembled. They argued over who the right person was: town magistrate, a sympathetic priest, an emigrant who could carry evidence to another county. The debate produced rapid exchange, 3 to 6 short lines, each revealing different priorities. A magistrate will bury it. Anna insisted a priest may hide it. Ivo replied, then who? Anna demanded someone who will publish it. Ivo quietly. Their negotiation ended when a dog barked in the lane outside. The external noise snapped them to attention. Someone had noticed lights at the mill. Ivo slammed the satchel closed and pushed it toward Anna. Take this now, he said. Hide it. I will slow them. Anna did not protest. She wrapped the page in oilcloth and slid it inside the satchel. Careful, she said. He nodded and set off toward the town, a deliberate and slow silhouette against the night. He planned to return to the house and to his father, and the choice was a trap as much as a strategy. The twist here deepened. Ivo would remain inside and act as if loyal, while secretly moving pieces out. Anna walked back to the river with the satchel at her hip. She took the long path and kept to the dark. When she reached the stone where she had read the torn page earlier, she opened the satchel and checked the copy. The map matched the marginal notes exactly. The scale of the ledger's plan showed itself fully there. Rotation of villages, names of men who would carry victims, and times when patrols would be light. She folded the page into the locket and set the satchel by her feet. Dawn light washed the river yellow. A man in a cloaked coat walked the far bank and dropped a package into the current. The action was small and precise, someone moving evidence. Anna watched it until the river took the parcel away and felt a dread that was not abstract but immediate. The ledger moved beyond the Petrovich house. A morning knock at her own door came as she walked toward the market. When she reached the lane, she saw two of Vladimir's men moving with the slow, methodical gait of those who serve a household. They scanned faces and paused at stalls. One of them lifted his chine. "Have you seen a woman with a satchel?" he asked a baker, as if searching for a rumor rather than an enemy. Anna pulled her shawl closer. She folded the satchel beneath a cloak and walked on, keeping her step measured and her hands as empty as possible. She could not yet show the satchel to anyone she trusted without exposing them. The ledger made that clear. The list contained not just names, but the contacts that would ally against exposure. By the time she reached the river bank to sit and read again, the town looked unchanged. That normalcy was its own danger. Anna folded the copy into oilcloth and placed it inside the satchel. She handed the satchel into a hollow of the stone under the bridge and buried the opening with 2 loose bricks so it would not show at a glance. She did not know how the next day would turn out, only that she had moved a piece. Ivor's choice had given her a path. Vladimir's enforcement had tightened the noose. The torn page alone was not safety. It was a starting point that forced decisions. At dusk, as a bell tolled from the distant parish, Anna heard a set of steps on the lane below, light, careful, carrying the cadence of someone coming to claim shelter. She stood, smoothed her shawl, and slipped the handkerchief containing the original torn page into the locket at her throat. Then she walked toward the gate where a neighbor would meet her, and gave a single, practical instruction. "Make sure my mother's neighbor knows to leave at dusk tomorrow." The line named the action and started a chain. She did not sleep that night. She kept the locket warm against her chest and listened for the house's sounds. A chair dragged, a cough, a far-off clink of iron that could be a ledger closing. Near midnight she heard a step at the window and stepped back into shadow. A whisper, Ivor's name. He had returned to the house and the ledger, and his decision would carry the household forward. The chapter closes with a concrete action. Anna folded the torn page into the locket, buttoned the shawl tight, and walked out into the street where the river fog still clung. She paused at the corner, looked back toward the Petrovich house, and set one foot forward onto the lane. Feeling the weight of the paper against her sternum, and the knowledge that the ledger's tally had just been copied into a different hand. Anna caught Ivor with his cloak half off, and a wrapped leather notebook under his arm, and she yanked the bundle free before he could step into the shadows. Betrayal burned in her chest and shaped every move she made. She held the notebook by the strap and did not let him pull it back. Ivor swore, breath sharp in the moonlight. "Anna, give it here." The strap cut into her palm. He stepped forward. She steadied her feet on the cold cobbles and said, "You are taking what belongs to others." Within those 4 lines the problem was clear. The ledger took voices, and tonight someone planned to move it. She kept her voice low because other people slept nearby and because the risk was real. Any raised sound could pull Vladimir into a stairwell and end the argument with threats or worse. Anna had been shoved across that same table once before, during the first recording, and the memory of the ledger's weight pressed her fingers inward. She remembered the wood creak and the rope biting her wrists. That day had given her a margin piece to steal, and that piece had become proof. She named the danger a Lodivo. You cannot carry it away. He looked older than his 32 years. The moon flattening his cheekbones and making his ink-stained fingers look like rumors of maps. Ivo kept his eyes on the notebook as if it had a facebo, she said again, using his name like a lever. She had learned to use names to slow people. He did not look away. He whispered, "I will copy it. I'll make it clean." The conviction in his voice stung her more than any blow. Anna's suspicion turned to anger and then to a cold calculation. She thought of the ledger's toll, townsfolk who vanished, a tally that named one she loved, the smear she pulled from a page in the cellar. The ledger had not only recorded screams, it had taken them. They moved into the narrow alley, bodies brushing against wet stone. Ivo tried to pry his hand free and she tightened her grip. He shoved once. She did not flinch. "You don't understand." The sound he broke off, searching for words that matched what he had been listening to for years. "The sound tells something," he said. "It tells shape." "I can fix the errors." Anna laughed without joy. "Fix the errors? You mean make it clean so they can do it again?" "Who do you think you are helping, Ivo?" The word Ivo landed like a stone. He answered, "The craft matters. Vladimir kept it safe. The family has a duty." Betrayal hardened in Anna's face. She pressed the strap so hard the leather creaked. The argument tightened into short, jagged lines. "Ivo, stop," she said. "Anna, listen." He said, "You listen to the screams. And you call it science." She spat. "You think I don't know what it took?" He fired back, "You do know. I found the tally that listed Mikhail." Her voice dropped to a thread. The alley swallowed the name and left it raw. Ivor's hand trembled. That name, Mikhail, tied this fight to the ledger in the attic. In Chapter 3 she had found a hidden tally, and now she used that discovery as a blade. Ivor's eyes dipped. Mikhail's name was misread. "We could correct it." Anna pressed the torn margin against his palm. He did not read it immediately. The paper smelled of ink and rain. They moved toward the service stair. The manor loomed above them like a held breath. Their footsteps echoed. The stone of the stair was slick from the night's fog. Each threshold they crossed brought the danger of a patriarch's voice. Ivo kept saying he would copy first, then burn the original. He said it slowly, as if the sequence mattered. Anna answered with short sentences, "You will not perfect anything. Those pages are not yours to save." They climbed with the rhythm of two people stealing time. Their movements were quick and small, hands on rails, breath measured. At the landing, a candle guttered in a sconce. Ivo slipped the wrapped notebook from beneath his cloak and tried the attic door. The lock resisted. He crouched and pressed his ear to the wood. Anna watched his jaw work. He whispered, "If I can reach the cache, if I can." He stopped because he heard something, a slow, certain footfall on the stair below. The sound came in measured intervals. The footfall forced both of them to flatten themselves against the stone. The foot came closer. The angle of light changed. Someone moved with the sound of leather and old boots. Vladimir stepped into the stairwell, and his presence cut the night like an iron rule. He did not speak at first. He looked at the notebook in Anna's hands and at Ivo's open palms. "What is this?" his voice said. He moved down 3 steps without hurry. His coat hung the same as always, heavy and practical, and the chain of a leather-bound book clinked faintly against his waist, where his own ledger had once been chained. He smelled of wax and iron. Ivor's face folded. Anna held the strap so tightly it whitened her knuckles. Vladimir's tone did not rise. He asserted rather than demanded, "This book is a sacrament. You know that." Ivo. Anna's anger boiled into a different shape. She thrust the torn margin forward and said, "You claimed Mikhail's name, and you doubled it with tally marks." "I have proof." Vladimir did not look surprised. He inclined his head and said, "Show me." The attic light found the paper and laid his scarred cheek into hard lines. He read. His face gave almost nothing away. Then he said, "You took this page from where?" Anna answered, "Sharp from the ledger, the cellar table." "You remember the rope, and the candle." "The rope and candle tied back to the first recording, to the day Anna had been forced onto the table. Vladimir's look did not crack, but Anna saw his fingers clench. Ivo looked between them, and the weight of his father's steady presence pressed on him. Doubt crossed his features. Father, I will copy the pages, then we will have duplicates. The record will be preserved and errors corrected. Vladimir's gaze did not soften. He stepped closer, so close that Anna could see the burn mark at his temple. Preserved for what? He asked. The ledger, he implied, was not merely a record. It was a family proof, a right. Anna felt the old order tighten around her like a strap. She could not be soft now. She thrust her palm toward Ivor's chest. You will stop, she said. You will stop, because Michael was not a number to you. He was a man I loved. The sentence landed with a small, concrete weight. Vladimir's hand moved the space between them, and Ivo flinched. He to his son, you will not ruin the family for regret. The word ruin hung in the air like a threat. Ivo swallowed and said, do not make me choose. The father and son stared like two weights about to tip. Ivor's rupture happened in a motion as quick and ugly as a snapped twig. He pulled the wrapped book to his chest and ripped the twine with his teeth, fingers shaking. Pages fanned out, some torn, some smudged where hands had touched too often, some blank where he had scraped lines away. Stop him. Anna to Ivo, meaning Vladimir. Ivo did not answer. Instead he shoved the book toward the candle and opened it. He read aloud, as if the act of hearing would make the truth undeniable. Page 32, ink blotted, tally 3, name illegible. Mikhail. He read. His voice steadied, then faltered. He lifted the book and revealed pages he had edited, names crossed out and overwritten, tally marks erased and then restated. He pointed at one line where the ink had been scabbed over with a darker hand. Lied here. Ivo, someone added extra marks. His finger smudged the blot and ink smeared into a gray crescent. Vladimir turned to him. You have been changing pages, he said. The accusation was a flat stone. Ivo's face went slack and then tightened into new lines. I altered notes I thought wrong. I corrected mistakes. The room filled with the small physical sounds of breath, leather, and stone. Anna watched the father and son exchange as if a blade passed between them. The argument escalated rapidly. You unmade our work. Vladimir are not work. Anna replied, this is our protection. Vladimir, protection for who? Anna shot back, for the family. Vladimir for the ledger. Ivo not for the living. The last phrase fell and changed the room's air. Vladimir's face moved. He reached for the ledger. His hand closed on the book's cover. Ivo stepped forward. No, he said. Vladimir tried to lift it. His fingers found damp paper and ruined edges. For the first time, he moved with force rather than ritual. This stays with us, he said. Ivo met that force with something else. He struck his father. Not with the blunt of an instrument, but with the heel of his palm and the full weight of a son who had learned to measure sound, and now measured a moral weight that could not be reconciled with pages. The slap landed on Vladimir's cheek, and the sound filled the wooden stairwell like a bell. 3 lines of exchanged dialogue came fast and crude. Ivo? Vladimir barked. Father, not this time. Ivo, answered. You dishonor us. Vladimir snarled. You built the dishonor, Ivo. The physical clash that followed was not theatrical. It was practical and raw. Vladimir lunged to reclaim the ledger. Ivo turned his shoulder and shoved, and the two of them fought for a single object that had held 1,000 final moments. Anna grabbed at pages that spilled free and tried to press them together so the names could not drift apart. Paper slid over stone and dust. Candle wax dripped onto ink and made letters blur. Vladimir's old body gave way. He stumbled on the stair and fell across the landing. The sound of his head hitting wood stopped everything for a small, frozen second. He did not move to stand. The ledger tumbled from his hands and pages skittered toward the hearth where a fire breathed faintly. Ink blood where wax hit it. Anna crouched and scooped up a handful of pages with shaking hands. The pages smelled of smoke and iron and towns that whispered with missing people. She dragged them toward the hearth and pushed them into the coals. Ivo stood in the doorway with his chest heaving. His face had changed color. Rage gave way to shame, and shame to a relief that looked like a thin, cold light. He nothing for a long time. He could not meet Anna's eye Sivo, she said, and the name landed. He came back to her with steps that were careful, like a man approaching a wound. He tried to speak and his words came in small pieces. He destroyed pages. He admitted he erased some names to spare them. I could not watch faces fade again. Anna listened. Her hands were black with soot. Her hair had a strand of wax. She felt the earth under her knees. Vladimir made a sound from the landing, a breath that could have been a curse or a surrender. He pushed himself up slowly and looked at the ruined ledger in the hearth. You will pay for this. That threat had old bones in it. It implied family mechanisms and ways to enforce silence. But he said it with a hand on his temple where a burn marked his skin, and the burn trembled. The words were thin. Ivo moved toward his father. No more recordings, he said. No ledger. Not by us. The sentence was short, and it shifted the room. Vladimir's eyes narrowed. He lunged again, but Ivo stepped aside and the patriarch fell back onto the stone. He did not rise with the same conviction as before. The ledger's pages had smudged and the ritual had broken. Anna dragged the ruined stack until the last readable name blurred. She let the paper fall into the fire and watched letters turn into ash. The action tasted like both vengeance and loss. Ivo stood with his hands at his sides and then, without asking, he picked up a single book from the scattered heap. It was a small, closed notebook bound in plain leather, the sort of volume that might belong to a watchman, a ledger kept for small counts. He held it as if he were not sure what to do with it. He handed it to Anna. Take it, he said. Leave one witness. She held the closed book and felt the weight of pages against her palm. The notebook had nothing of the official ledger's scale and ritual. It had a single strap and the smell of town ink. Anna looked at Vladimir. He lay on the stair with his eyes half open and a thin smear of blood and wax on his temple. He did not move fast enough to reclaim what he had lost. Outside, the sky had a slow edge of blue. Dawn was rising in the east and cars and carts had not yet begun to stir. The Maina's long shadow still lay on the street. Anna walked to the hearth and set the closed notebook beside the candle in the soot-blackened heap. Her fingers trembled when she put it down. She did not lock it. She left it shut and alone. The candle guttered and the flame bent, then steadied for a breath. The single, closed notebook was a witness, a deliberate thing left where anyone could see it. Ivo stayed on the threshold of the attic, breathing like a man who had lost an old map and found new ground. I am sorry, Anna. The apology was small. She looked at him and named the change she had seen. You hit him. She said you chose. He swallowed it. He said he chose the living over a record. He looked at his father's stillness, and then at the burnt pages. I will answer for this. The promise contained no flourish. Only the concrete step of a man accepting consequence. Vladimir made an effort to rise and then paused. He could not meet either of their eyes for long. You have ruined a line of work, he said in a voice that had lost its ritual smoothness. He attempted to stand. His legs trembled. Ivo moved to help him and then halted, unsure whether his motion would be interpreted as submission or a new allegiance. Vladimir pushed the offered arm away and rose by gripping the banister. He steadied himself and looked at Anna with something like calculation. You left a book. He said you left a witness. That cannot stand. The threat sharpened again, but it lacked the old certainty. Anna wrapped her shawl closer around her shoulders. She thought of the first recording, the ledger on the table, her own hands bound, the smell of wax and the rope's bite. She had carried the torn margin for nights and felt its edge under her palm like a blunt truth. Now she placed the closed notebook near the candle, and the partially burnt pages lay like a ruined map at her feet. She stepped back and did not speak. A cart's bell chimed twice on the far street, a sound of ordinary business that made the events in the manor feel monstrous by contrast. The aftermath did not resolve all things. Police or town watch could be called. People would whisper. The family name would shift in small ways. But the ledger, the instrument of those final recordings, was ruined beyond the rituals that sustained it. Ivo sat on the bottom step with his head in his hands. He kept muttering fragments, he kept the sound. He said we kept nothing. Now he looked up and met Anna's eyes. He intended to perfect it. He said, "I'm sorry." The apology returned as a concrete sentence, not a bloom of sentiment. Anna turned away and walked to the manor door. She stopped, reached into the pocket of her dress, and drew out the torn margin she had stolen earlier. She had kept it folded for a reason. She pressed it against the closed notebook and then tucked it inside the strap, as if sealing a witness into a witness. The single, closed book now contained proof that could be read by hands other than theirs. It could be shown to townsfolk, to a magistrate, to anyone who would tally the ledger's cost. Ivo rose and followed her to the threshold. He spoke once more. "I will take the blame for the ruin." He said he will tell the truth if they ask. Anna looked at him, measuring whether the apology had weight. She nodded once, then "Stay here and clean the rubble." She said, "Find the names that matter and burn the rest properly." He complied without comment, moving with the quiet of a man who had been upbraided and had chosen to obey. Vladimir finally stepped down and stood, hands on the banister. He watched as Anna closed the heavy door behind her, and then opened it a crack to look back. "You think they will accept a single witness?" She did not answer immediately. She set the closed notebook on the doorstep, beside the guttering hearth's embers that had smudged their way into the threshold. She pressed her fingers into the leather as if to test whether it was real. "They will see names," she said. "They will see that Mikhail existed." The answer was small and precise. The outside world began to accept dawn. The market bell sounded closer, and a dog barked in the distance. Anna stepped onto the cobbles and pulled her shawl higher. She left the single closed notebook where hands could find it, the candle leaning so that it cast a small, reedy light across the cover. Ivo remained inside with the ruined ledger and a father who would now be forced to reckon with a broken tradition. Vladimir pressed his palm to his temple and did not speak. His silence was not a quiescence but a slow, heavy thing. As Anna walked into the Pradorn, she felt the hollow that came from both victory and loss. She had ensured the names would not be erased quietly anymore, and she had pushed a son to choose. The immediate battle had been decided in the dust and flame of the attic, but the struggle would stretch across town rooms and council benches. Still, that did not change the present. She had placed a closed notebook beside a candle and walked away. The notebook sat silent on the doorstep, a witness that would either start a reckoning or be ignored. Anna pulled her shawl tighter and crossed the square as the first cart creaked past, carrying bread and people who did not know what the ledger had cost them. She did not look back. The single book on the doorstep caught the last of the candlelight, and then the morning swallowed the street into color as she disappeared into the market crowd.